As a young man, I made many mistakes, the worst of which was enlisting in the Grey King's army. I believed it was a noble cause with a noble ruler. But I was wrong. I forged papers when I was just 15 years old in order to begin my service early. I had come from a military family, raised to believe there was no higher honor than dying for king and country. How eager I was to throw my life away for the quarrels of a king who didn't even know my name, just like my father before me. I found myself quickly rising through the ranks, put in charge of my own company of soldiers at the age of 19. We were tasked with peacekeeping in the foreign land of Chardu, which the king's army had conquered just a few months prior. It was there that I learned that our king's efforts to conquer new lands were not the noble cause that he had made them out to be, and that the king's definition of peacekeeping was far different from my own. These people had had their land ravaged, their homes destroyed, and their people, fathers, mothers, children, killed, simply for trying to defend the land that they called home. Understandably so, my company's presence was not welcomed by these people. Bands of revolutionaries quickly formed among the Chardunian people, and it seemed a battle was imminent. I wrote to the king telling him of the looming revolution, pleading with him to order our retreat. I received just 2 sentences in response. My army does not retreat. If they revolt, kill them all. Those horrible words will be burned into my memory for the rest of my life. It was either refuse a direct order from the king or allow a massacre of my own people and the people of Chardu. I would like to say that the choice was easy, but it was not. I selfishly considered the latter for longer than I'd like to admit. However, I eventually commanded my soldiers to retreat, back to the kingdom. Upon arrival, I was swiftly stripped of my land and titles and sentenced to exile. A gracious sentencing, I was told. I suppose a slow death in solitude is more gracious than a quick one by the executioner's blade in the king's mines. And so, without even being able to say a final goodbye to my mother, I was shipped across the vast ocean to the frozen land of Frasa. After struggling to survive for a few days after arriving in Frasa, I collapsed in the snow. I hadn't managed to scrounge up more to eat than a handful of berries. I hadn't slept a wink in days. The snow that I consumed had not hydrated me, and my thin clothing did nothing to stop the intense cold from numbing my entire body. As I stared up into the sky, I took solace in the fact that at least the last thing I saw would be the snow falling gently from the sky. A pretty sight, despite the fact that the snow was my executioner. My vision faded, and I accepted my fate. When my vision returned, I thought I was surely in the afterlife. I felt the familiar warmth of a fire against my face, and the cozy feeling of a soft bed beneath my body, which was wrapped in a thick fur blanket. My vision, blurry at first, slowly returned to me, and I saw the face of an angel smiling down at me. I attempted to speak, but she put a soft finger to my lips and spoke in her voice, warmer than the fire and blanket combined. Don't speak. Save your strength. And in the span of 5 words, I was in love. Her name was Lorisai. She had found me when I was on the brink of death and brought me to her dwelling, nursing me back to health. She was one of the many people who had made Frasa their homes. Frasa is not a place suited for most life forms. The only things that tend to make it their home are either creatures that can survive in an icy, desolate hellscape, or people who have nowhere else to turn. Luckily for me, those people are far more accepting of an exile than most. They knew not only how to survive in the harsh climate, but how to thrive. Hunting, fishing, foraging, she taught me all she knew about survival, and I became a member of the clan. With each day that passed, I fell deeper in love with Lorisai. Her presence had turned the harsh desolation of Frossa into a paradise. Long, treacherous hikes up the icy mountains were our moonlit strolls. Fresh-caught fish over the heat of an open flame were our dinner by candlelight. I was enamored by her wit, her charm, her kindness and beauty. And yet, she did not seem to feel the same way. I would hold her hands and look into her beautiful brown eyes, and she would glance away. Her embrace was often stiff, almost feeling forced. And when I finally mustered enough courage to tell her that I loved her, she burst into tears. She broke down and told me that the reason she was in Frossa was due to a curse that was placed upon her in her youth. Her best friend, a powerful witch, had fallen in love with her. Lorisai had to turn her down, explaining that she didn't feel the same, that her feelings for the witch were only that of friendship. In a rage, the witch cast a terrible curse upon her, making her incapable of feeling love. "If I can't have you, nobody can," spat the witch, her words like venom. Lorisai told me of the pained look on the witch's face, a tear trailing down her face as she disappeared. The curse had hurt many people in her life, her family, her friends, her potential lovers. So she came to Frossa to be away from the world, to live in relative solitude. She told me that she did care for me, more than she ever thought possible. That she wishes she was capable of love and that I would have it all if she was. That night she fell asleep in my arms, her tears soaking through my coat. That night was also the last time that I saw her. I awoke to an empty dwelling, a note addressed to me folded neatly on the table beside me. It read, "Dearest Christo, you have shown me that I cannot continue to live life without love. I cannot stand another minute of seeing the glimmer of love in your eyes, unable to return it as you deserve. I am traveling to my homeland of Busari in order to reverse this terrible curse. I shall return to you not a moment later. I will be back before you know it, capable of saying the words that have been trapped within my heart all this time. I love you. Yours always, Lorisai." I was not happy with her choice to go about this on her own, but I understood her decision. And so, I waited for her to return. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Today marks 2 months without the light of my life. I can wait no longer. The worry for her safety has become too much to bear. And so, I returned to the mainland for the first time since my exile. I will find you, my love. I promise.